I'm Stanley Iezman, and I'm very excited to be here today with Sabrina Unger, our Managing Director of Research and Strategy. And we're going to be talking over the next 10 minutes about the future of office and the death of office, and talk about it in the context of what is going on in today's environment. Over the last several years, we've been talking about the future of office in the context of the shutdowns that have occurred as a result of COVID. And today what we want to do is really dig into this and really understand what your view is and what our view is an American with regard to utilization of office. So why don't you share with us some of your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I think what's coming out is that the lasting impression from the pandemic will be hybrid as it relates to office demand. When we look at the Castle Back to Work Barometer, for example, it seems to be finding stasis at around 40 to 50% office attendance relative to pre-pandemic levels. So effectively, what that insinuates is people are coming into the office about half as frequently as they did before the pandemic.
So what do you think this means with occupier demand in real estate over the next several years, given this lack of people coming into the office today?
At a 30,000 foot view, office fundamentals are absolutely going to be challenged for the foreseeable future. When we look back to the period of 2020 and 2021, corporate tenants were signing short-term extensions because they didn't want to be making permanent space decisions at the peak of uncertainty, right? So now we have those starting to roll to market just at the onset of what may be a recession. So that's certainly going to be challenging. And then we also just have to contend with natural lease expirations. So putting aside those short-term extensions, we have something like 900 million square feet of office leases nationwide that are going to be rolling between 2022 and 2025. So all that to say, each company's demand is going to be different, but I don't think it's a leap to assume maybe half or some of that 900 million square feet that's, rolling, they're going to, shed some space, whether it's to have more efficient floor plans, consolidate locations, what have you. The likelihood is that some of those leases, when they roll, they are certainly going to be smaller than they were initially. So I think in terms of net absorption, that means it's going to look tepid compared to what is considered to be a normal year.
So that sounds pretty bleak. I mean, we're investors, and are there any bright spots out there, and how do you think about that in today's world from an investment strategy standpoint?
So, when we said that there were going to be consolidations or, tenants are going to be looking for more efficiency, that insinuates that they are going to be signing leases. So there is some demand to be captured. It's just going to be fewer leases in the aggregate, and it may be a smaller amount of it. So we need to fight for our share of what effectively will be a smaller pie. And when I think about characterizing office demand, it's really winner take all. And the winners are either new or freshly repositioned assets that have all the amenities, the bells and whistles, the green credentials, all the things that tenants want beyond just their physical floor plan, right? So there's going to be a disproportionate amount of leasing that takes place in those sort of new or freshly repositioned buildings.
So I'm glad you asked made that comment about the office market and the differentiation between higher quality and lower quality office. My question is really one, now what are we going to do with all this Class B and Class C space? Are these going to become zombie buildings? Are people going to use them? What are the alternatives that we're going to be dealing with?
Yeah, so we're seeing a lot of discussion come about office to apartment conversions, right? Cities are generally supportive of this. They're looking for opportunities to add housing. Housing advocates are certainly a big proponent of this. So it seems like it's a great idea, right? And it solves for a much needed problem in most cities. But the reality is, I don't think it's going to be some widespread solution to the over office issue we're facing nationally. We need to think about what functional obsolescence means when it comes to office. Most of the time, functional obsolescence is by virtue of physical elements. So whether it's, bad column spacing, low ceiling heights, inefficient mechanical systems, the reality is all of those things are very expensive to fix. So unless even the B and C office really reprices even more material than it already has, we don't think we're going to see that writ large across markets.
With workforce getting younger, and the millennials sort of aging out along with us boomers, and technology becoming much more prevalent and ubiquitous, is there a need for office in today's world? I mean, how do you think about that today and juxtaposing that with the demand for office that is out there?
So it is precisely this young workforce that necessitates some sort of physical gathering place. We recently did a change agent piece about how millennials are sort of gearing up to be in the C-suite in the next decade and how they're going to be incredibly influential when it comes to space decisions. So if we only stopped the conversation there, you could certainly say that millennials are ready to eschew the office, right? Because they've already built their professional networks. They've sort of learned their jobs, in place. They have their mentors. And so they're very happy, to work from home. But the reality is that isn't the end of the conversation, because the millennial leaders of tomorrow are going to have Gen Z employees, and those younger, freshly minted college grads, they don't have their professional workforce. They don't have their network. We as humans tend to find things easier to learn when we get to do it in person. So there's something about personal and professional development that is there no office at all, it's a detriment to those younger generations. So while the millennial leaders of tomorrow may be more than willing to, do permanent work from home, the reality is that their subordinates are going to require some space for them to come together.
There are dueling headlines in the newspaper about CEOs of companies like Meta and Alphabet demanding that people return to work. And we read about it every day. And then you read in the same newspaper columns the fact that there's quiet quitting where the younger workforce are suggesting that they don't want to come back. How do you think that we should be evaluating that in the context of this conversation about demand for office and the future of office?
So many of the companies that are sort of leading the charge on the return to the office, they are sort of monsters or titans in their own space. So whether it's Meta or Goldman Sachs or, they have the reputational power to be able to try to bring people back, and they're willing to lose some of those people that don't want to be in the office because they know that their recruitment strength will bring people back. What I look at in terms of sort of the intermediate and longer term outlook for office and whether there's going to be sort of a shift in employer and employee power is just structurally in the United States, we don't have enough workers relative to the number of job openings. So unless we see something like 2 million jobs, whether it's openings or existing jobs disappear, it's sort of always going to remain in favor of the employee. So while I think some companies will mandate being back in the office 5 days a week, the savvy, strategic, growth-oriented companies, I think they're going to embrace the idea of hybrid because it allows them to capture the best talent and might capture some of those quiet quitters from great firms that are more than willing to come over if they're given hybrid.
So prior to the pandemic, the number of people per square foot was significantly higher. That we were talking about density going down from 300 square feet per employee to down to 200, and even in the tech companies, they were going down to 150. Do you think that there's going to be this level of concentration going forward, leaving aside the health issues? Do you think that that's going to continue on, or do you, and it's going to diminish, where we're going to have greater density or less density, and how do you think that applies to office demand?
I think what we were seeing even before the pandemic is there's certainly pushback, in the 100 square foot per employee space. You feel cramped, you don't have your own space. There's certainly certain types of roles that require the ability to focus without hearing your neighbor's conversation. So we were already seeing a reversal in that trend by and large. We do have to account for the recency bias of the health concern. We don't want to be on top of the people that we're working with, and we also have to think that people don't like hoteling. So there's this idea that if I have 100 employees, maybe I only need 50 desks because, Joe will come in 2 days a week and Mary will come in the other 2 and they can share a desk. The reality is most people don't like that. People want to leave things. They want to feel like that space is their own. So I don't think that we get to a place where we continue to see densification push, below 150 square feet per person. I think we probably settle back nearer to the mid-range. We probably don't get back to 300, but I don't think we go down to 100 either.
So thank you. And as we go through the next several months, and we're going to revisit this conversation, we're going to see and look at exactly what's actually transpiring, because it's going to be fascinating to watch the shift that occurs. So Thank you.
I agree. Thank you.